Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Isle of Man Government Conference 2023 and this first Q&A session with the Chief Minister of the Isle of Man, Alfred Cannan. Now, these evening sessions this year have been added on following feedback from the first government conference last year that people would have appreciated the chance to come out and hear and talk to the government outside of working hours. So that's what we've done. Look at your build it and they will come. So that's really good to see so many of you here. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening here with us. Now, the three themes for this year have been very well publicised. We've got education and skills, and there's panels and presentations going on the main stage tonight. And tomorrow, finance and budgets and housing and communities, with a packed agenda throughout tomorrow from 9 o'clock until 6. But this session is, as billed, no frills, no spin, no pre-prepared lines. This is your chance to talk to the Chief Minister, to give your views and ask some questions. And we want to get through quite a lot of questions. So I'm going to try and keep it moving as briskly as we can, but giving the Chief a chance to properly address each question. So I'm here really only to get things moving and keep things flowing. My name's Marian Kenny from the Cabinet Office. And I'm going to tell you just before we start how to put your questions. So there are two ways to do this. You can either stand up and ask your question in person. We've got two people with roving mics who will bring them to you. Or you can use Slido, and the QR code to use Slido is on the screen now. It's a kind of interactive online questions box. So rather than write your question down on a piece of paper and hand it in, you write it down on your device and it pitches up magically here on my tablet and I'll read it out. I guess the only difference is if you stand up and ask your question, we can see who you are. We'd like to know who you are, if you wouldn't mind giving your name. But I think you can ask a question on Slido without giving your name, although we'd like you to do so. So the Chief Minister would normally be, have been outside moving among you in the reception and on the landing there, but he's in a degree of discomfort tonight. I think you've hurt your back, Chief Minister.
I have. I've got a sciatica, so if I'm looking a little bit uncomfortable, I do apologise for that. I think politicians normally leave public Q&As injured rather than come into them injured, but I'm here with an injury to start, so if anybody wants to nobble me on the way out, they have a good chance of success.
But here he is, battling through the pain to be here. So it's the second annual conference. You said it was about having a big conversation with the public, all about engagement. What do you think that the government got out of the conference last year?
Well, I'm delighted, and thank you very much for coming along this evening to see people here to engage. This is a new initiative. It is in its second year. My hope is it evolves and develops and can truly reach out to all sections of society and give people various opportunities to engage in areas of interest or to speak to senior politicians such as myself or other ministers, or even just community MHKs. And I've already seen one or two people walking around tonight. So I hope that it evolves. Clearly, you can't cover every single subject when on a small island we've only got 24 hours or so to deliver the conference. But and of course we do appreciate feedback from people. So I hope it proves worthwhile for a second year, and we'll take further feedback and try and take it forward to a third year. But it is about engagement, it is about listening to people's views, and it is a chance for people to question myself and others about the direction that the island's heading in.
Well, talking of the direction the island's heading in, the island plan, the government's going into its third year of its term in office. How do you think progress is going with that?
So, we've had quite challenging 2 years for various reasons. Not only obviously a new government coming together, putting together an island plan, but of course world events and world affairs have really impacted on us quite significantly. Everything from inflation, Ukraine war, policies for us around refugees, exiting COVID, of course, putting in further sort of financial support schemes for everybody across the island in terms of freezing electricity prices, bringing in additional funding elements for some sectors of society during that sort of key critical cost of living period. And of course, trying to bring forward the various strategic approaches that we want to deliver the success, the main thrust of the island plan, building a secure, sustainable and vibrant future for the community. And so this third year really will be very much about delivery. I'm looking forward to the next 24 hours. I think there's some critical announcements coming forward. I hope we'll hear from Enterprise, Bumper Enterprise tomorrow about brownfield sites. I'm pretty confident and optimistic. We will be delivering some positive news on that front in terms both of housing, leisure facilities, and what we're going to do in terms of sustaining our broad construction business community over the next 4 years. We've got some interesting projects lined up in some of our core sectors, manufacturing and financial services. And of course, we need to drive forward with the housing project. And you'll see tomorrow there is a couple of hours dedicated to housing, the Tolson report we've had, the creation of a housing association. And of course, the critical issues that continue to impact on the community in a number of critical areas, health, of course, and education. And both those areas will need to be driven forward quickly over the next 12 months.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's by way of warm-up, but now over to the floor, and we're ready to take some questions. So here's the Chief Minister, open to all comers. Who's got a question for us? Gentleman there with his hand up. There's a microphone coming your way.
Chief Minister, I know you enjoyed meeting Alfred Wiggins last year, who was the special envoy of the Prime Minister of Barbados, and I have continued to keep in close contact with her and other leading people in Barbados as I regularly visit there. Well, as you know, Barbados's hospitality peak points is December to March, which is in contrast to the hospitality peaks in the Isle of Man, which I would say are May to September. Barbados has a problem when its peak season finishes, because many of the hospitality staff are laid off or put on short time. And I wondered if your government would consider having short-term contracts for certain, it doesn't have to be Barbados, Bajans, but obviously I have contacts there. I just wondered whether your government would look favourably upon short-term contracts. The other second point is that I do believe there are many people in the Isle of Man who have international connections in niche markets, and I believe that your government could utilise such people on an unpaid basis to represent your government as a representative or a quasi-envoy when they go to these niche markets, which may well help us promote the benefits of not only living in the Isle of Man, but also investing here.
Okay, so just dealing with that first part in terms of staffing levels. Part of the island plan is to attract 5,000 new jobs, and of course, in doing so, create perhaps a younger demographic to address some of the challenges we can see coming forward if we just carry on in a level playing field. And we also know post-COVID that some sectors are struggling for staff and staffing. So actually looking for innovative solutions where we can see gaps, and hospitality is clearly one of those areas which from time to time struggles to find the right staff is something that we are looking to address. Our preference is to get good people, young people, to come to the island and to live on the island. And part of the sort of drive to do that is to make sure that we're paying the right wages and lifting up the living standards for everybody, so they have a good opportunity no matter where they're sort of starting on their career. But yes, at times there is a need to be more innovative and ensure that we have the right framework, if you like, for people to come to the island to support business and industry where there are shortages. Now, I'm not aware at the moment that we've identified specific critical needs, although we are aware of some of these shortages. We are, of course, marketing heavily in terms of our Locate program to the Isle of Man. But in terms of initiatives, then Department for Enterprise will always be ready to listen to people's plans. Of course, one needs to factor in and consider how things can be accommodated if indeed we do get to the stage where you think there's a sort of exchange program that can work effectively with somewhere that, like Barbados or wherever you're or whatever country you're considering. So that's the first point. And then the second point, the idea of using our alumni, our people who connected with the island, who have a passion for the island, can represent the island in other countries, is something that we try to utilise naturally anyway. There's plenty of examples, and I probably can give you in terms of individuals, for example, in South Africa, who will be a voice for the island and be seeking to attract business and people to come across and live on the island. And they might either be doing that commercially or might be doing that as part of their greater sort of promotion of the island. But our sort of broader strategy is something that we're actually considering at the moment, and we are looking at how we can enhance our sort of international presence to ensure we are maximising business opportunities. And of course, alongside that, we're working hard with the UK at the moment when it comes to free trade agreements. We're critical. We're very much in those agreements at the moment for goods. We're pressing very, very hard to be given full access to the various free trade agreements that are either in the pipeline or currently about to be signed, because we want to be in for goods and services, and that will also be of assistance to ensuring that we're building our exposure internationally.
Well, thank you for that really stimulating question and start. I'm going to go to a Slido question that's come through. So, Chief Minister, what do you feel about the UK Prime Minister's decision to move the climate change targets on cars and boilers back by 5 years to 2035?
Well, given it was only announced about 2.5 hours ago, I'm obviously trying to determine what impact. I mean, I suspect, from our own positioning, that we will have to move in line with the UK when it comes to vehicles. I think it's potentially going to be problematic if we're out of line with our major trading partner when it comes to vehicles. But look, I think we're going to have to take time to digest that. It doesn't necessarily knock us from our plans, though, in terms of progressing with our renewable energy plans or progressing with the targets that we've put in place, either through the Climate Change Act or through the indicators we've put in our island plan. So sure, there's going to be some question marks about vehicles, but in terms of pressing ahead with our plans for new properties, to get rid of gas, to put in renewable energy sources for the future, put in electricity from renewable energy sources, and to create programs to enable people to ensure that the housing stock is fit for the future, are definitely going to continue. So I don't see a massive material change, but there may be some impact when it comes to assessing what we might need to do around petrol and diesel engine vehicles. So
plans can continue, but targets obviously always kept. I think probably it's the vehicles, and we will have to pay some attention to what's gone on there. But I think I don't see any material shift in our plans to meet our climate change targets, given that energy is actually the critical part of what we're trying to achieve at the moment. Okay, that's a straight answer. Thank you. I'll take another one from the floor, and I have another one on Slido. Margaret. Just wait for the microphone, please.
Oh. Yeah. Hi, Chief Minister, and thanks for the opportunity of speaking with you. It's obviously you're talking about a fairly high number of people coming here, and we do need economically active people. It's just a concern to us that we've got 2,500 people on waiting for urgent appointments. We've got 3,000 people waiting for dentists, 1,000 of which are children, or over 1,000 of which are children. We've lost our sustainability in terms of the basic bread. We've got an airport that's at the moment having all sorts of problems of flights cancelled, and obviously sometimes we've had boats cancelled, which we can't help the weather. But to attract people here, surely we have to also be thinking about the people that already are here. And I mean, we have a 23-year-old grandson who's come back to live here from Australia, the type that you would hope we would want. He's a police constable now, and he can't get a dentist. He's been waiting for 3 years, and it just concerns me. I'm not one of these Manx NIMBY people that doesn't want people to come here, but it really, really concerns the situation we're in at the moment, the infrastructure. You know, the Isle of Man over our lifetime now is starting to look tatty where it wasn't at one time, and it's a real concern. And I would just like to see if you could allay that concern, please. Thank you.
So thank you very much, and I think a lot of people will share your concerns. I mean, I think there's an absolute recognition that there are critical areas within the public service, health particularly, that need considerable improvement. And actually, one of the reasons why we put a fresh £18 million into health was to deal with 4,500 of those operations. And I know we're probably halfway through that, and we're going to continue, and we're going to get to the end. So 4,500 people will have had their new hips, knees, and whatever other sort of minor or orthopedic type operations that they were looking at. So we will have done a significant amount with that 18 million. To have cleared some of that, but I did see the recent figures, although they were lacking a little bit of explanation around those. But nevertheless, look, I get the basic point, right? You know, you're wanting to attract new people, yet you're saying, you know, service delivery in some areas is not up to scratch, and that you have concerns, etc. So I think, though, one has to strike the right balance, because, you know, there's a lot of sort of infrastructure issues with public services that have been around for a long time, and health's an easy one for me to sort of pick on, and I don't want to pick on health, but if you look over the last decade or so, even without ambitious plans around delivering 5,000 new jobs and residents, there's been long waiting lists. We've had West Midlands health reviews, we've had serious concerns about delivery in the healthcare sector. So I think as a government, we cannot afford to stand still in trying to improve, right? But my view, and I think Council's view, is that should not be a barrier to us also trying to progress and develop the island, because of all the limitations that we will eventually get as we get older. And the risk is, actually, if we just let the sort of demographics stand still and don't advance, actually the situation becomes worse, because eventually we stop earning the taxation that we need, or have to put taxes up, and the younger generation becomes less in numbers. Businesses struggle to recruit. I know they're struggling at the moment, but you can see there's a lot of knock-on effects. So I think that actually, yes, we've got to resolve some of these issues, and we've got to strive to do it. And there are actually ways that we can tackle some of those sort of infrastructure projects, particularly around airports, for example, by doing things in a different way, not just relying on the same old way to do things. And I know the Treasury Minister is going to be doing his piece tomorrow. A lot of it comes down to money, the availability of finances. So, for example, we'll be talking about housing associations. That's a different way of leveraging finance and investment to create low-cost housing, first-time buyer housing, sheltered housing for elderly people who are less able to afford their own properties and things. So, and you could similarly look at restructuring at the island in a number of areas to try and maximise new ways of delivering better infrastructure. So I hear what you're saying, and I share, right? I share those concerns, but also firmly believe that we must develop and push the island ahead, because otherwise, if you sort of wait for that sort of nirvana piece where absolutely everything's in perfect order, a decade, 2 decades down the line, I think we could have significantly missed the opportunities. And now is the right time for us to push forward, because of the global state of affairs, and the fact that if we don't, our competitor jurisdictions are trying to push forward. So absolutely, but we will, in some ways, some of these problems will always face a government. Our job is obviously to tackle as best we can, and we've set out plans in terms of trying to support Manx care. We've got to look at the funding situation there. Clearly, there's the dentistry issue. So there is a lot for us to do, but I want to give you my reassurance. I recognise there are problems there, but nevertheless, we should not stop being ambitious for the sake of our younger generation, and to make sure that the island is in a better place in the future. Well, absolutely. And the good news is I think that the health minister is in about an hour's time or so. So if you're still around, maybe, but we should not stop striving to improve public services. And I do not shy away from the fact we have got challenges on our hands.
Okay, thank you for that. A real talking point, which I'm sure will come up again with the rest of the conference and certainly with the health minister. We've got one here from Natalie Byron-Tier. So this one's about housing associations. So we had the announcement in the last 24 hours that the Isle of Man's going to, the government's going to progress looking at a model for a potential housing association. So the question is, do you believe housing associations are the answer to our housing crisis? When will we see any significant change to the current lack of affordable housing using associations? It's a three-parter this. And does the possibility of creating a tiered social system not concern you? So if we start with the first one, are housing associations the answer to the housing crisis?
I think our challenge certainly for this government is to move the housing agenda forward. I think when you look at the numbers of local authorities across the island that are involved in social housing, and the disparity in terms of the way that they're potentially approaching that, the availability of housing, which I think was a critical issue at the last election, the affordability of housing, where that strategic direction was coming from, and I think most of us who were out campaigning at that time agreed that there was a serious lack, both in strategic direction and in clarity about what a government was doing to address some of these challenges. And I don't think it's always easy when there's multiple local authorities also tackling housing in their own areas. Government's got its stock, about 1,200 houses. Douglas, I think about 3,000 or so houses. Ramsey, 1,200 or 1,000 plus anyway. And other local authorities with their bits and pieces, 6,500 or so social houses. But also within that, we've also got mixed bag of approaches to sheltered housing, for example. So what a housing association can do and will do, one is bring strategic direction. Secondly, these are not-for-profit organisations which are challenged with solving problems within the community around providing first-time buyer solutions, providing solutions for social housing, looking at that holistic sort of cradle-to-grave approach, if you like. So in other words, making sure that they're also encompassing the right mix of elderly residential sheltered housing, and also having the opportunity, free from some government bureaucracy, to do investment in other areas and to look at perhaps more broadly tackling issues around first-time buyers. So the evidence that I have, and we've seen, and Council of Ministers so far has seen, and it's still at a very early stage because we've got this Tolson report now that said, yes, you could go out, start a housing association off and look at that for the future of the island. So there's still some way to go, and I've still got to have a political debate with my colleagues in Tynwald. Nevertheless, there is a lot of potential there for that to deliver real solutions for people. And I think what we need to do, I appreciate obviously Natalie will be coming from this from a Douglas Corporation perspective. I hope that we can put away some of the sort of local politicking around housing and look for solutions that are going to deliver better outcomes for our residents. And housing associations, in theory, and there's plenty of evidence of good housing associations who deliver this, will deliver on a not-for-profit basis, but nevertheless unsubsidized, deliver housing and solutions for the community that will tackle some of the issues for those particularly those people who can't afford to get on the housing ladder or are struggling to get on the housing ladder, and indeed those who actively need support with their housing.
So the question did refer to the concept of a tiered social system, which it inherently is, having a housing association with social housing and obviously cradle to the grave.
Look, I mean, I think I'm not sure whether that question is really sort of relevant. I mean, at the moment we're already putting in, a social housing program that perhaps we struggle to make sure is properly adapted to the needs of the community. I think the housing association model demonstrates one, focus, second, a good strategic approach, and an ability to deal with a range of housing issues, from social housing to actually the sort of the private market or that sort of mid-rent and space in between. So there is opportunity there. And I think one of those parts of the question was, well, how long will this take? The bottom line is it's actually not a quick solution. It will probably take some years. But we will lay a platform for change on the island that will mean in 4 or 5 years' time we will be able and capable of delivering better solutions for people on the island across a range of situations. And that's what I hope will come. And I mean, I think that if we just carry on doing what we're doing, my fear is that either lack of government funding or lack of local authority ability to borrow or sudden increases of interest rates are going to inhibit programs. And I think you can put a housing association will look to leverage and stand aside from direct taxpayer funding and leverage the value of the stock to build new stock, refurbish, and also try and maximise, has more flexibility to maximise some of its balance sheet by buying and selling property as well.
Thank you. And there will be a session, a dedicated session on the Tolson report and the different models and options for a potential housing association for the Isle of Man tomorrow, which you can see on your programmes. So let's move tack completely. What is the future, Chief Minister, for the Kroger gas field development?
Okay, so that's still under consideration. I appreciate that's taken actually a long time and far longer than it ever should have done in terms of Kroger publicly made clear their position in terms of requesting a change to their licence and wanting to drill an appraisal well. That position, and obviously as a new minister in the DOI, it's still sort of within the DOI's remit. But look, I think we're moving forward with that. I know that it's a subject that is under very active consideration. I would be disappointed, and I think I said this on the radio a couple of weeks ago, I'd be disappointed if we hadn't made very clear our position when it comes to offshore renewables within the next two or 3 weeks. But I can assure you it's under active consideration. We made a commitment to Kroger, and my point around this, whether people agree with gas or don't agree with gas or agree with offshore wind or don't agree, once the government's entered into commitments, we should deal with those commitments properly and respectfully. And my position, and I know Council's position, will be to ensure that we are doing so. And I expect 2 to 3 weeks, and we should be in a position to provide clarity on that. And clearly, I'll be working closely with the DOI Minister to try and achieve that.
Okay, you heard it here. Let's have another one from the floor. Gentleman here in the third row.
Hello.
Just speak right in.
I feel I'm sympathy for you, Chief Minister, actually, but you are part of the problem at the moment, actually. Is the last administration was the worst administration we've ever had. They've signed up to some ridiculous, they signed up to the climate change. There was no need to. There's 8 billion people in the world. We're 80,000. Who's going to take any notice of us if we signed up to it? We should be doing things at our pace, not being chased and doing everything too quickly. We should go back to how we used to do it. Tread a lure, wait for things to happen and look at opportunities. And, and big issues like spending money on the landing stage at Liverpool, 120 million now, for a shed for foot passengers. I mean, for God's sake, it's crazy, really. Issues like that, I think we should have a referendum when you're spending our money, taxpayers' money. What do you think?
So I think there's quite a couple of big issues. Let me just deal with that latter point first. I mean, I think this capital projects, the government's management of big schemes and how they're delivered, and I think that I think there's quite a lot of evidence when it comes to the big schemes. There's often overspending and probably a fair perception that things haven't always been delivered as well as they could have been. So we have put in place a new major projects unit to try and to oversee that now, which will have non-executives on it, and will try and bring some more commercial discipline to government projects. Listen, I mean, you know, Liverpool landing stages is become a massive issue for us. You know, it is due now to come to its end and its conclusion, and it is there for 250 years. So you know, and I trust it'll be a benefit in the longer term to the community, but it's, you know, not a pretty picture. It's hard for me to sit here necessarily and defend that. But what I will say is that we are looking seriously at the overall project. We will look back at that and determine where things have gone wrong, because clearly, you know, the government does rely on a lot of expert advice as well, and there have been some very, very serious and senior UK businesses, if that's the right word for them, who've been advising as well. So we'll be looking back at that in a critical way. But, you know, I trust that project will be up and running, and I think the bigger issue is what are you doing to try and stop that in the future, and the creation of this major projects unit with external advisors, I'm hoping will be a step towards that. I think your issue about the climate change and spending money. Well, we have committed money to our programs, and of course, you know, substantial sums are due to be committed around the energy program. We've put in 8 million or so into our green living scheme in order to help people upgrade their housing and make sure that the house itself is properly insulated in order to take renewable energy effectively. I think that we have to continue. I talk about it as climate change pragmatism rather than climate change activism. The problem with not pushing ahead is that we just get left behind on this issue. And I think you also have to look at some of the advantages. Better housing, right? Cheaper supply of electricity. If we get the solar panels on, if people's houses are properly insulated. I was talking to my local plumber actually at the weekend, who was a great non-believer 2-3 years ago, now having done some houses and put in the solar panels and got the pump, the air source heat pump working properly, has said this will work. You just got to be careful about how you carry out the initial installation and the construction. I think we're at a critical phase. We need to keep pushing forward, but we have to do so sensibly. I mean, I think, as I said, it's pragmatic approach to it. We can't just spend money that we haven't got. But also the critical part of the whole programme, frankly, is delivering the renewable energy. And I think once we overcome that, and we've got till 2030 to get that in, my view is that we'll be a long way down the line. But also, you know, there's a lot of positive benefits economically. You know, the amount of transition that's going to be available, new skills that we will require. So kids who are going into or youngsters who are going into the construction industry will have opportunities to train in new technologies, new ways of doing things. I think there is if you took whole housing stock, all the 50,000 houses that we've got over here, and said, you know, at least 2/3 of those need some form of upgrade or change into the future, you can see the economic benefits that are going to come through for the construction industry. And that's going to sit alongside, I hope, some positive announcements that we'll hear tomorrow about how we're also going to develop some of our brownfield sites, and they will also be developed with new buildings that will, I hope, maximise the latest in renewable technology. So I don't think, you know, my view is I think that would be the wrong thing to do, would be to do trade law, because I think we'll get left behind, and all we'll be left with is a massive catch-up programme because everybody else will have moved on. And the other point, very quickly alongside that, and I know this comes up, you know, frequently, but a lot of our main businesses, our senior businesses on the island now have quite comprehensive ESG programs, and the way that the island is approaching climate change, its commitments, its responsibilities, does come through in terms of their board reporting to parent companies. And if we weren't progressing and we weren't painting a positive picture, it's probably fair to say that some of that business would not be coming our way, because a lot of money and a lot of investment, and those who are in the stock markets and will know that there is a substantial amount of pension fund money and big corporate investors who are now determining some of that investment based on country or corporate objectives when it comes to climate change. So But there's a difference between irresponsible approaches and a pragmatic, sensible approach.
Thank you very much. I'll have another one from the floor, and I've got one more left on Slido. There's a lady in the front row here. Just bear with us one moment, because we've got about 5 minutes left.
Hi, Janet Tomini.
Just hold it closer to your mouth.
Hi, in reference to the Housing Association, I understand that the idea that you're thinking about at the moment came from a model in Jersey. What happens if that fails? Because the model in Jersey, the Housing Association there, while they've got the different tiers of rent, etc., and what people are available to rent, when the Housing Authority wanted to put the rents up by 9%, the government, which apparently it was at arm's length, government said no. How is that going to equate here?
So I think I want to make clear, because I appreciate, Janet, you'll have good experience of this from Douglas' perspective. I think I need to make clear that the concept is there, the evidence is there that this will work. Well, I want to, as I said, have that debate with my Tynwald colleagues, and also have a period of consultation where we can hopefully discuss this a bit more with the local authorities too. I think there are opportunities. I think the plan from Tolson, I don't know if we've had a chance to read it yet, but it's only just been released, so you may not. But they basically said, look, this does work. It's successful. It works for the community broadly. There's plenty, as I said, of good examples. You need good stock, though. I mean, ideally, you need 4,000 or 5,000 houses, but you can do it off the 1,200 houses that government owns, and produce, 200 and at least 250 in the first five years of new investment and new building. I hope that we can all work together and find a better solution for the whole island, because at the moment housing deficiency payments are 7 million, probably going to head up to 8 million pounds. I think there's a lot of disparity between investment plans from local authorities, and frankly I do worry about the impact that that's going to have on the taxpayer more broadly. And I think that we could potentially work together to find a better solution, but the presentation initially will be to say, look, this will work from a strategic perspective from government, and we believe it will drive better outcomes for the community. I think if we can all get on board with that, my hope is that if we could find some common ground quickly, then we may be able to work together on it. But if not, let us get on and demonstrate how this can benefit everybody, and then we can evolve it as we move down the line. So that's my broad view.
Yep. So the Housing Association presentation, the guest speaker from the Tolson Partnership, is 2 till 2:30 tomorrow. So people who are interested in that subject, do come along to that if you can, because that will be followed by another panel Q&A specifically on the content of that presentation and what that model and what those options might be. Chief, we'll just go in the last
Take a few more.
2 minutes. Okay. So we're going now to government finances. Questioner, who is anonymous, very concerned about the use of reserves with no obvious attempt to balance the budget. How much has external government borrowing increased since you became Chief Minister? Are you able to answer that?
I don't think there's been any increase in external borrowing, but clearly I think the Treasury Minister has been very clear that this year the planned deficit was £150 million, and then that was going to come out of reserves. And I think people will have some idea that things are not going that smoothly, particularly when they've heard already. I think Manx Care have said they're going to be £30 million or £27 million overspent, and you can clearly hear and see the perhaps sense the impact of inflation in terms of government expenditure plans. So I think there's a lot for the Treasury Minister, who, by the way, is on next, if anybody is here particularly. But I do think this will be a critical budget. I think February will be the time. I think we've said that we're prepared to facilitate 150 million from reserves. Clearly, the plan that the Treasury Minister set out, we'll have to see when he produces the Pink Book in January, February, as to how that is progressing. There's still a lot of statistics to come in, a lot of information. I think I think that it would be unsurprising to see an uplift though in revenue coming in, given also inflation and wage rises, etc. But of course, we're going to balance that out against what departmental spending looks like. There's going to be challenges, and of course, health spending is right at the very forefront of that. We set out a reform programme with Manx Care via the Sir Jonathan Michael report that did outline a funding programme. The realities of funding versus what was sort of set down on paper, proving difficult at the moment to meet. And I think if we're going to carry on trying to deliver the healthcare that the community is wanting and expecting, then we will obviously need to be talking about how that is funded as well. So there is a lot to think about, but of course before we do that, one needs to also assess from the Treasury, or we need the Treasury to basically tell us where our positioning is now, once the sort of quarterly figures, etc., or 3 quarterly figures are in, then they're in a better position to start planning their budget for next year.
Okay. And any more questions from the floor? Oh, we've got a whole scutch of hands. Go to the gentleman there.
Which one?
So we will try and deal with these fairly quickly. I'm conscious that we do have a schedule.
Almost used our time.
Well, we've gone, but we'll do 5 minutes more.
But we'll rattle through. So quick questions and some quick answers.
Good evening, Mr. Cannan. Alf Cannan, Castleward Farm. I'm sure you know me.
I do.
Let's go back to housing, if you may. Castleward Farm has offered this government for over 35 years, governments over the last 35 years, many ways of solving a lot of our problems. The 2 areas that are my grave concern: NHS and affordable housing for Manx people. And, of course, your planned key workers and, of course, the vulnerable people on the Isle of Man. Castleward owns 17 acres of the land programmed for the future expansion of this hospital. You've never engaged with us. It's available to you. We planned a national glen through Castleward Farm. Your previous DOI minister made a mess of it, and we withdrew that plan. In addition to that, Castleward Farm has an additional 140 acres where you could build anything from 1,000 to 1,400 affordable homes. Are you willing to take that challenge on?
This may be a case you've come across.
I don't think. I mean, Alf. I mean, I appreciate. This. This is your property and that you own it. I think clearly that's generous of you to offer the land. I don't know on what terms that's been offered, but I think there are. Clearly, one wouldn't necessarily discount anything. I think. What I will say to you is, look, I mean, the DOI minister, I'm sure, is open to engaging with you, the current DOI minister, and perhaps those discussions may well be more fruitful for you and for us. So I realise that, but we also have a fairly big, extensive building construction programme. We've set housing targets for this government. I think there are 1,000 new homes to be built, and of course 25% of those will be affordable housing. And of course, well, I think to be fair, we do normally sell them to people where we can. On the first time buyer programs, there's been one incident, and that's a complicated one, but where it went to an investor, if that was the reported incident that you're thinking of.
This is, of course, the event, the whole of it, the totality of tonight and tomorrow, where you can actually put those direct questions, either in a formal thing like this or in the margins and the side meetings, to the Minister. The Chief did want
two more questions.
Two more questions. There's a lady down here who I'm going to offer the microphone to.
Hello, Chief Minister. You know who I am, Karan from EPL Recruitment. Just one question. So the figure that you have for the 5,000 that you want here within the next 5 years? Are you, or?
No, it's
Is it
5,000 over. It was
2027?
over sort of 15 years, but I think we've set a target for 1,800 in the next by the end of this administration.
I was interested in how quick that's happening. Reason being that in my whole recruitment here, there's been such a slowdown. Not only on, I mean, we've still got the issue with the work permits, but immigration. Oh my goodness, there are hundreds of people sitting on the borders waiting to get in here, and it's not happening. It's so
yeah.
And I have placed quite a number of these people that are waiting to get in here. Now I'm being threatened with, if they don't get here in the next week or two, and they've been waiting since June, they're going to lose that opportunity.
So is that, sorry, why they can't get here because of
Immigration's so slow.
Oh, immigration. Okay,
So
right.
slow. Because
I mean, I think we're conscious about immigration positioning. It's can be more complex than we would like necessarily, clearly because of our relationship with the UK and need to make sure that we are absolutely clear on immigration policy. And let's face it, we're normally very, very aligned to the United Kingdom. They are the primary entry point, of course, but it is a matter that we are, concerned with, and I think we're continuing to examine in terms of solution. I'm really pleased to hear, actually, there's people wanting to come to the island. I think you asked that question, where are we? I'm relatively confident that we're probably halfway towards our ambitious total of 1,800 new residents in terms of working residents on the payroll. I think there's clearly a concern. I think a lot of the new building, that the housing estates that are going up at the moment, houses are still selling relatively quickly. I know there might be a few more on the market now, but they are still selling and selling quickly. So we do also need to be clear that we are going to meet our ambitions of trying to change slightly the demographics and attracting new working people to the island, and that we don't inadvertently sort of just continue with the same problem. In other words, create more population, but having failed to perhaps redress the balance. But listen, I mean, yeah, I think. Listen, I hope that immigration and enterprise, we're willing to pick that up with you, Karan. I mean, we're really interested to know where and which locations those individuals are. Yeah.
Okay, did you want one more?
One more.
It's got to be really, really quick.
Don't want to delay Alex from his grilling.
Good evening, Chief Minister. The 2008 financial crash really was exposure to the subprime mortgage market. And 15 years later, we've got ESG practically everywhere, with the E being the environmental one. And it seems that the majority of financial institutions are heavily invested in solar and wind. But now you've got Moody's downgrading Ørsted to a negative outlook. You've also got no UK energy providers bidding at all, primarily because the wind energy is regarded as a mature technology, and they've withdrawn their contracts for difference and their subsidies, where they're basically saying, right, okay, we have to charge 2.5 times more on electricity. You're kind of looking in some ways at the chickens coming home to roost in terms of hidden subsidies, massive jacking up of this technology. Are you at all concerned that this might be another big crash coming? Because the writing's on the wall. It seems Deloitte's are shedding 850 people at the moment. You've got Ernst & Young of shedding 1,250. Similar numbers for PricewaterhouseCoopers and KPMG. Is there any chance that you might pause and have a look in case this might be another crash coming? Because if the Vattenfall, for example, they're having the same problems, they're not able to get anybody to bid for their electricity, and the Hornsey 4 off Norfolk, their Boreas wind farm. Are you concerned at all that this headlong run into the renewables might actually be a bit of a problem in the future?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I'm going to duck it because I'm not an economist, and I don't want people blaming me if they leave this room and start putting money onto a market crash on my advice. But I think, listen, I mean, I think the island's relatively well positioned because we're not in, we haven't embarked into that space particularly. Clearly we did want to push ahead with Ørsted. We're going to try and push ahead with Ørsted if it's feasible. If they have a route to market, we will help them try and get there because it will be good for us to be able to be part of the maximisation of opportunity in our territorial seas. Where that market's going, it's hard to say. I'm just not qualified enough to really answer that question. I'm well aware of that sort of maturity point, if you like, and clearly, obviously, acknowledge the fact that no bidders were put into the latest round, as at round 5, I think, wasn't it, of the CFDs, and that the pricing was just regarded as far too low for what the providers wanted to build for. I think probably if I just stick with what I think from an Isle of Man perspective, our plans to put in the interconnector are still there. And I think it's right that we do that because that provides us, as well as import-export opportunities. I think it's still a maturing market. And actually, the onshore proposition is much more, I think, reliable and sustainable. You can see much more clearly the business plans and cases behind that, and I think that's the position that we're in at the moment, is maturing. I think we're still trying to understand how we can continue to maximise that. It's going to take some considerable time for that market to develop. There are lots of people out there with plans for onshore electricity generation on the island. Some of the complications for us are around grids and grid infrastructure and how we invest into that. So it's complex, the bottom line, but I still think that this drive towards renewables is going to continue, and you're far more versed in this than I am in terms of predictions around crashes, but one's always nervous about markets and market conditions. The island's been really resilient. I mean, yes, 2008, when I first came into politics in 2011, we were coming out of that backlash, and 2016 we had sort of 1,500 people unemployed. Half of what we used to have in the sort of 70s, but nevertheless enough to start causing quite a lot of problems for government and a bit of sort of social division, if you like. And we've worked really hard over the last 8-9 years since 2016 to bring ourselves into a better position. So I'm confident that we'll be resilient enough to get through it. But I acknowledge these are tricky economic conditions out there, and there's lots of policy impacts happening in renewables, and even the announcement today from Rishi Sunak is bound to cause some sort of market reaction to the position. So I'm sorry I don't really answer that question, but I think from an island perspective, I'll be confident that we're resilient and that we're pursuing the right course, and we are not overly exposed to some of those issues that may be occurring from offshore wind.
That's a very meaty question to finish with. We will have to finish there. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming. You've thrown a whole scutch of challenging and complex and stimulating questions. You've had some substantial answers from the Chief Minister.